Please give it up. Fear it no less than the sensual passion, because it, too, may take up all your time and deprive you of your health, peace of mind and happiness in life. The science of the church is neglected for the study of geometry, and they lose sight of heaven while they are employed in measuring the earth. Euclid is perpetually in their hands. Aristotle and Theophrastus are the objects of their admiration, and they express an uncommon reverence for the works of Galen. Their errors are derived from the abuse of the arts and sciences of the infidels, and they corrupt the simplicity of the gospel by the refinements of human reason. In the early part of the 9th century, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, a mathematician working in Baghdad, wrote a seminal textbook in which he highlighted the usefulness of restoring a quantity being subtracted, like 2, above, by adding it to the other side of an equation. He called this process al-Jabr, which later morphed into algebra. Then, long after his death, he hit the etymological jackpot again. His own name, al-Khwarizmi, lives on today in the word algorithm. My well-discussed paranoia urges me to believe that some tiny segment of the NSA's parsing algorithm is finely tuned to my voice. In right-angled triangles, the square on the sides subtending the right angle is equal to the squares on the sides containing the right angle. What geographic profiling does is it takes a look at the locations of a connected series of incidents, say murders in a serial murder case or robberies in a serial bank robber case, and it spatially analyzes the point pattern of incidents, and creates a probability surface from those, working from the basis of an algorithm that says people offend close to where they live, but not too close. Dadaism adopts a strictly functional approach to humanity, appraising the value of human experiences according to their function in data processing mechanisms. If we develop an algorithm that fulfills the same function better, human experiences will lose their value. Thus, if we can replace not just taxi drivers and doctors but also lawyers, poets and musicians with superior computer programs, why should we care if these programs have no consciousness and no subjective experiences? If some humanist starts adulating the sacredness of human experience, Dadaists would dismiss such sentimental humbug. The experience you praise is just an outdated biochemical algorithm. In the African savannah 70,000 years ago, that algorithm was state-of-the-art. Even in the 20th century it was vital for the army and for the economy. But soon we will have much better algorithms. If Euclid's point, though incapable of being drawn by any human agency, has an imperishable value, my picture has its own for mankind to live. The right algorithm is to put off seeking funds for as long as physically possible. And in an ideal world, a startup would never have to seek funds at all. Euclid discovered that perfect numbers are always the multiple of two numbers, one of which is a power of 2 and the other being the next power of 2 minus 1. As to writing another book on geometry, the Middle Ages would have as soon thought of composing another New Testament. Better balance, less pain and less restless-legged syndrome. 4 circles to the kissing come, the smaller are the better. The bend is just the inverse of the distance from the center. Though they're intrigue left. Euclid there's now no need for rule of thumb. Since 0 bends a dead straight line and concave bends have minus sign, the sum of squares of all 4 bends is half the square of their sum. The difference between human dynamics and data mining boils down to this: data mining predicts our behaviors based on records of our patterns of activity. We don't even have to understand the origins of the patterns exploited by the algorithm. Students of human dynamics, on the other hand, seek to develop models and theories to explain why, when, and where we do the things we do with some regularity. You want to evaluate future borrowers, but in order to train an algorithm that will help you identify future defaults, you have to train it and evaluate it on past data. In comparison, Google is brilliant because it uses an algorithm that ranks web pages by the number of links to them, with those links themselves valued by the number of links to their page of origin. And so will I here state just plainly and briefly that I accept God. But I must point out one thing: if God does exist and really created the world, as we well know, He created it according to the principles of Euclidean geometry and made the human brain capable of grasping only 3 dimensions of space. Yet there have been and still are mathematicians and philosophers, among them some of the most outstanding, who doubt that the whole universe, or, to put it more generally, All existence was created to fit Euclidean geometry. They even dare to conceive that two parallel lines that, according to Euclid, never do meet on Earth do, in fact, meet somewhere in infinity. And so my dear boy, I've decided that I am incapable of understanding of even that much I cannot possibly understand about God. I'm less interested in uniqueness than in goodness. I see so many concerts where the program notes are more interesting than the music. I remember talking to one composer who went through the most complicated mathematical algorithm to generate some material from scratch. It took weeks and weeks, and he came up with a C major chord. For me, honesty is more interesting than originality. There was no hope for him this time. It was the third stroke. Night after night I had passed the house, it was vacation time, and studied the lighted square of window, and night after night I had found it lighted in the same way, faintly and evenly. If he was dead, I thought, I would see the reflection of candles on the darkened blind, for I knew that 2 candles must be set at the head of a corpse. He had often said to me, I am not long for this world, and I had thought his words idle. Now I knew they were true. Every night as I gazed up at the window I said softly to myself the word paralysis. It had always sounded strangely in my ears, like the word gnomon in the Euclid and the word simony in the Catechism. But now it sounded to me like the name of some maleficent and sinful being. It filled me with fear, and yet I longed to be nearer to it and to look upon its deadly work. Not only has volume been ratcheted up, but expectations have, too. Quiet success painting a picture, writing a poem, writing an algorithm is all well and good. But if you haven't become famous doing it, then did it really matter? Yet there have been and still are mathematicians and philosophers who doubt whether the whole universe, or to speak more widely, the whole of being, was only created in Euclid's geometry. They even dare to dream that 2 parallel lines, which according to Euclid can never meet on Earth, may meet somewhere in infinity. He thought that when he had healed sufficiently, and withdrawn from the capital, he might write the Magus a letter and open a correspondence on Euclid, or Thales, or the new idea from the north, that the sun and not the earth might be the center of the universe. Old Euclid drew a circle on a sand beach long ago. He bounded and enclosed it with angles thus and so. His set of solemn graybeards nodded and argued much of arc and circumference, diameter and such. A silent child stood by them from morning until noon because they drew such charming round pictures of the moon. There have been and still are geometricians and philosophers, and even some of the most distinguished, who doubt whether the whole universe, or to speak more widely the whole of existence, was only created in Euclid's geometry. They even dare to dream that 2 parallel lines, which according to Euclid can never meet on Earth, may meet somewhere in infinity. I have come to the conclusion that, since I can't understand even that, I can't expect to understand about God. I acknowledge humbly that I have no faculty for settling such questions. I have a Euclidean earthly mind, and how could I solve problems that are not of this world? And I advise you never to think about it either, my dear Alyosha, especially about God, whether he exists or not. All such questions are utterly inappropriate for a mind created with an idea of only 3 dimensions. What has been affirmed without proof can also be denied without proof. No one knows what the right algorithm is, but it gives us hope that if we can discover some crude approximation of whatever this algorithm is and implement it on a computer, that can help us make a lot of progress. An algorithm is a methodical set of steps that can be used to make calculations, resolve problems and reach decisions. An algorithm isn't a particular calculation, but the method followed when making the calculation. I helped start a ceramics company called CPS Technologies. We took it public in 1987 at $12 a share. 3 months later, there was this horrible cliff. Black Monday. Fidelity had bought 15% of our stock, and their algorithm caused them to dump it all onto the market that day. We dropped from $12 to $2. Many new data scientists tend to rush past it to get their data into a minimally acceptable state, only to discover that the data has major quality issues. After they apply their, potentially computationally intensive, algorithm and get a nonsense answer as output. Where folks like Google have fallen down is in just putting a little review box up, then closing their eyes and letting the algorithm take care of itself. Yelp is a technology company. but also a company that understands how people want to connect with one another. Did chemistry theorems exist? No, therefore you had to go further, not be satisfied with the quia, go back to the origins, to mathematics and physics. The origins of chemistry were ignoble, or at least equivocal, the dens of the alchemists, their abominable hodgepodge of ideas and language, their confessed interest in gold, their Levantine swindles typical of charlatans and magicians. Instead, at the origin of physics lay the strenuous clarity of the West Archimedes and Euclid. At the age of 11, I began Euclid, with my brother as my tutor. I had not imagined that there was anything so delicious in the world. After I had learned the fifth proposition, my brother told me that it was generally considered difficult, but I had found no difficulty whatsoever. This was the first time it had dawned on me that I might have some intelligence. Supervised learning algorithms typically require stationary features. The reason is that we need to map a previously unseen, unlabeled, observation to a collection of labeled examples, and infer from them the label of that new observation. If the features are not stationary, we cannot map the new observation to a large number of known examples. But stationary does not ensure predictive power. Stationarity is a necessary, non-sufficient condition for the high performance of an ML algorithm. The problem is, there is a trade-off between stationarity and memory. We can always make a series more stationary through differentiation, but it will be at the cost of erasing some memory, which will defeat the forecasting purpose of the ML algorithm. How much ever hard you may try to program your mind to be logical, the stupid heart creates an superior algorithm suited to it. They even dare to dream that two parallel lines, which according to Euclid cannot meet on Earth, may perhaps meet somewhere in infinity. A rough rule of thumb is that a supervised deep learning algorithm will generally achieve acceptable performance with around 5,000 labeled examples per category, and will match or exceed human performance when trained with a dataset containing at least 10 million labeled examples. I took a computer science course to fill a prerequisite at Stanford, and I realized that every day was a new problem, and every day you got to think about how to solve something new, how to reason through something new, how to develop an algorithm to solve for something you hadn't worked on before. Mother Nature did not attend high school geometry courses or read the books of Euclid of Alexandria. Her geometry is jagged, but with a logic of its own and one that is easy to understand. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe the channel and like, comment, share.